Thank you, Dr. Ishwar, for inviting me and for making Triple an integral part of this workshop. So I'm going to talk about a question which might be bothering a lot of clinicians and even those in the room, right? How do we all want to do something. So how should we go about doing something meaningful, which delivers not just a pilot, but something that is useful, right? So let's talk about that. Let's first look at the problem that we are dealing with. So while it is coming up, right? So as a part of Center for Digital Technologies, what we do is we try to solve clinical problems which are by deploying or building solutions which are deployable, leveraging the academic research and the rigor and strength of IIIT. So as a part of that, we get asked a lot of questions on what projects are useful, how can we collaborate. So that's the experience which is driving and building of whatever I'm presenting right now. So first of all, let's acknowledge the translation gap, right? No matter which domain are we dealing with, there is always a big gap between the promise and the delivery, especially in the context of AI. It's actually not just AI, right? Even in the past, whatever the technology, that there was always a promise. But given that AI is more promising, there probably is even a bigger gap between what we want it to do and what is actually getting done. So these are some numbers. 80% fail to deliver value. About 95% of the Gen AI stuff that you do, because they're easy to build, they don't show meaningful impact. And Gartner predicts 60%, I thought was a little high, that 60% would be abandoned. AI projects would be abandoned. Forget about them not even delivering value. Those which have started getting abandoned halfway through. So those are significant numbers. We got to be cognizant that, hey, it's not adequate to think of, have a good intent, but it's important to see through the value. Now let's look at healthcare. The situation doesn't look any different. It probably is, in fact, maybe a little worse. Right? More than 90% of the AI models, they don't get deployed for various reasons. We'll explore some. Some we have explored, Dr. Naresh has covered. 80 or more than 80% of the models, when you use it on a different data set than what you have actually trained on, the performance deteriorates to various degrees. Now that's an important thing, and which is fundamental to when we expect AI to be useful, we expect that, okay, I can take what is built somewhere, use it somewhere else. And by some measures, right, AI algorithms are in some sense equivalent to drugs, because you are making an algorithm and you are depending upon that, and outcome is going to be there as a result of your diagnosis or your treatment or whatever else it is. So, and increasingly, there is a thought that we should be having for impactful AI designs, there should be randomized control trials. But not many randomized control trials have happened. Most of the FDA approvals are based upon 501(k), where there is a predicate and then you say that mine is slightly better than that. 40 was by 2021, by 2023, by when I could find some data, was about 85 or 86, not too different. So there is still a significant shortage of authentic evidence to say that this actually improves the lives and outcomes for the people. I think we have talked about that. Dr. Naresh has talked about it in great detail, but just to say that I thought that these are things maybe equally applicable across domains. The bias, explainability, robustness, localization to make sure that it works in your environment, and kind of monitoring on a regular basis to see if the AI model is drifting. Like, I mean, one of the things is that every AI model is expected to have a shelf life. As the data changes, you expect that a model should evolve to retain the same performance, even not to improve it. So for that, it is expected, and most people should plan for, hey, how do we kind of improvise so that this AI model adjusts to the better data? And what was interesting to discover is that for most of the FDA approved algorithms, there is no clear plan or evidence that they are monitoring this drift and they are doing something to overcome that. So that's something which is concerning. Now, that's about AI, which we have dealt with in the previous topic, but it's important to recognize that it's not just the model. We should look at AI as a whole system, especially in the clinical space. This is a research from a paper which did a systemic review of about 59 papers which were dealing with bias and categorized them into various groups which they have identified as barriers. It's interesting to note that. So some of them we probably may already have talked about several times, data and all of ethical stuff, trust and all of that. But it was interesting to note some of the other things that the people who are supposed to be used, because they are not trained adequately, they are not adequately integrated, they don't use, that's considered a significant barrier for usage of AI. It ranks about 26 of about 40% of the papers have said that that's a barrier for them. Willingness and engagement. Now, you also need to give them a reason to believe that, hey, this is better, this is going to make their lives better or patients' lives better for them to use it. Now, these are not some things that we give due consideration for when adopting a model that is probably developed elsewhere. We expect that it should result in some benefits, but it may not. Similarly, the patient safety. The doctor needs to be convinced that, hey, this AI is sturdy enough that it handles the distributional shift from the training to wherever you're deploying and as it evolves. And also, a doctor might be realistically concerned that would the other clinicians stop exercising their judgment and start relying on the AI too much, that even though there is a human in the loop, it ends up being a theoretical thing. It may not be as effective in practice because the clinician also is a human and he might start overly relying upon what the device is saying, which is the automation bias. So they're concerned on that front too. It looks good on paper, but hey, it might lead to some problems. Other things, health inequities, social acceptance. Sometimes a patient may want to be diagnosed or may want a doctor to look at it and not a machine to kind of look at it, look at his reports and say that, hey, you got to go do this. So these are all various barriers that were identified, and it's important. If you want to build something meaningful, we got to be conscious of that. Now let's talk about how do we address the main topic, right? How do we bridge this gap, right? What should we do? The first part is that how do we identify, I have this beautiful thought, is it good? Is it something that I should put my efforts towards? So these are some thoughts based upon all that we have heard over the last 1.5, 2 years probably on, hey, how should we go about, how should a clinician or how should we, when working with a clinician, go about identifying a useful project? What are some good traits? One is relevant and relatable. You don't want, as it is, the problem with sometimes the people disconnected with clinicians is that we imagine the problem. We don't want the clinician to be doing the same. We want you to identify a relevant problem and relatable, that where you bring in your strength, where you have the first-hand experience of what the trouble is. And a lot of times what we conceive of as problems do have some solutions. They may not be adopted effectively. So it may be an adoption problem for various valid reasons. It's important to look at the hypothesis and then see the background as well to see, hey, is there something that we want to try it out and then formulate the problem better? Another thing is that, hey, what's the focus? What's the primary thing? What's the one thing that I want to accomplish? What is that I want to accomplish so that I can call this a success? So that I can target and make sure that it is resulting in meaningful results. Readiness, this again one thing, right? I want to do some great stuff. We encountered those bottlenecks as well, but the data is not available or is not in a shape that can be usable, or the device guys are locking it up and not opening it up for anyone else to make use of it. Practical challenge, which we sometimes ignore. And the time, you might have good intent, but for you to deliver on AI, it's a team that is working and other people are investing in you as much as you are expecting them to work along with you. So make sure that you have time to work on the AI project and you are not drowned on everything else. Beneficiaries, looks obvious, but sometimes it is important because AI system, you also need to know who is going to use it. Is it the doctor? Is it the patient? Is it the lab guy? And how are they going to use it? And how is it going to benefit them so that the stakeholders are readily onboarded? And feasibility and fit. A lot of times we hear of cases where AI model was good, but the overall clinical system failed to deliver value because it was taking longer. The whole system, the workflow was taking longer than it would have taken otherwise without AI. So considering this, CDIT is acronym for our Center for Digital Technologies in Healthcare at IIIT. What we have done is that we have developed a self-evaluation checklist to help a clinician or anyone who is looking at a healthcare problem to see, how do I look at this problem? How do I scope this? So these are just triggers. It's only is to enable a clinician to think through what are the problem and details, what's the impact potential, how is it being done today, what is that different that I'm suggesting, what is the innovation that I'm bringing, and what all can I make use of, what is my readiness, who all can I collaborate with. I think we have a slightly more detailed checklist. This is a quick summary. And it looks very simple and commonsensical, but sometimes when we put it to test, we do discover some interesting stuff. So we thought that it's useful for a clinician to use it. So that's on the problem front. Now, is our job done when we define the problem? That is only the starting point of the problem. Sometimes I've heard this, that a clinician is brought into loop predominantly at two times. One, when you are conceptualizing the problem, and two, when you are delivering the result to validate if the whole value is accomplished or not. I think that is severely undermining the efforts. Because unless a clinician is involved all through, a lot of them are not going to give meaningful results, because it's not a straightforward, as it is with any engineering or AI project, right? It's not a straightforward evolution from problem definition to solution. There are various decision-making points that you need to make for it to evolve. Is it the right model? Is it the right way? What are the other compromises that I would make? And is there a way I can put some guardrails to overcome those compromises? Right? When I'm capturing the picture, can I make sure that I'm capturing it in a certain format, only that part is taken in, so that I don't have to generalize my model so that it works even if the picture is wrong? Is it feasible? Does it make sense? So one of them is that, maybe the second point is that the continuous involvement of the clinician, and it is nice for clinicians to know a bit of how this AI works. We don't expect them to know everything, like Sharath has talked about LSTMs, RNNs and all of that, but it is good to know how they evolve. What are the different phases, as the first point talks about? What's the pipeline? What's a model? How does it fit in within the workflow? What are the human factors, so on and so forth? And every model, we can't go with one way. We have to look for a quick baseline. What is it? And then try and see how we can improve on that, because there are various paths and we can't explore all, and we got to be focused on solving the right problem. And especially for healthcare, I think if explainability is a must, if you feel that we cannot accept the model unless it is explainable, make sure that that is one of the success criteria. That is identified as a criteria for acceptance of the results provided by it, because otherwise you're not going to use it. And there have been various cases where doctors refuse to use it because they don't understand while they are being held accountable. So now, with all of this stuff, right, it might look, okay, there's a lot of stuff. How do I take care? What is there in the literature? I have heard some references yesterday and today too on, hey, what is that is there that can be used? Is there some guidelines? Now, we went discovering what is that is there, which is not very commonly perceived or understood. What kind of guidelines exist? There are quite a few. A lot of them borrowed from the drug trials, the life sciences industry. For example, the Spirit and Consort that you see are the protocols for publishing the randomized control trial results. Now, they were adopted and renamed as Spirit AI and Consort AI, so that whatever are the elements, wherever that needs to be adapted, when you are doing randomized control trial for AI, they have listed all of that stuff. Now, you can look at this as two categories. There is a lot of literature, because these are all, again, this is a paper published, right? Because the primary problem that they were trying to address was that how can researchers evaluate somebody else's research and know that it is meaningful? So most of the guidelines that you see are for research publishing guidelines. So if you are providing some detail about your AI model, how it is working, if you have developed it, then tripod plus AI is the fundamental mode that you may want to look at to make sure that the checklist is appropriately addressed so that you have all the things. Now, while it may be for publishing, there's a lot of inputs that we can derive from that, because if they are relevant for publishing, they are equally relevant for us when we are evolving the model, to make sure that if it is relevant for somebody else to judge our model, then probably it's a useful consideration for us to account for. So, and there are, for radiologists in particular, there are at least two of them. One is for image processing called CLAIM, checklist for AI in image processing, I think. And other is for radiomics, which is a different checklist, because I understood by going through that, hey, there are a lot of other things which were not that easy for me to follow in the clear part of it. So so if a radiologist is interested, maybe you should look at some of this to see, hey, what should be the specific considerations that you might have. And finally, there are two frameworks which are more implementation oriented, which are more holistic, which don't talk of from a publishing standpoint, but what should you do throughout the life cycle so that you know you are doing all the right things. There are two of them that I found. One is called Future AI, and one is Salient. Salient is by Equator Network, which makes use of all the other standards and builds into something. But Future is something which I found fascinating. It's a very recent one. So the acronym of Future stands for, as it says, fairness, universality, traceability, usability, robustness, and explainability. And there is another category called as general. So in each of these categories, they identify what are the specific aspects that any AI problem in healthcare should address. In each of them, they have listed a fairness 1, fairness 2, most of the things that we have talked about. How do we make sure that the AI model works in your environment? How important is explainability for that? What constitutes as a meaningful explanation? Is heat map adequate, or should I look for more things? What should I look from a robustness standpoint? What kind of checking has gone in? So it makes you think about all of these things to make sure that you address. And they have also identified, they have broken down maybe as an afterthought on what should be done at each of the phases so that you make progress. Salient, it just started the other way around. It started off with, hey, what are the various phases that are there, aligns them with how drug evolution happens, and then it identifies 4 pipelines: the data pipeline, the AI pipeline, the clinical workflow, the whole systemic pipeline, and the human factors, right? And how across each of these phases, what you need to do to make sure that you have a workable and meaningful system. So these are, if you are looking, all of these become important. What I have stated at the beginning, the problem is real. If your intent is good and you want to do something meaningful, anyone can build an AI model. It's possible to build AI model even in a day if you have everything else. It may be mostly useless, of course, but it's not about what does it take to build a model. It is what does it take to build something which can make an impact to the outcomes of the problem that we are going to solve. That's what takes a lot of rigor, and all of these considerations would become relevant in that case, and that's the problem that we want to solve, right? The gap, the translation gap. So one of the problems that we also get, so we do learn from this, try to adapt them to address some of the questions that we face. So one effort that we have done as a part of CDIT, this is my final slide, is that a problem that we face, at least on a couple of counts, is one time Mr. Rizwan Koita, the chairman of NABH, also when he visited IIIT, made this point that there is so many models in public health in India, but very few of them, if any, have hit the ground. So can you guys assist in, and the reason why they are not hit is that state government or whosoever is supposed to adapt it, especially in public health, they are not convinced adequately enough. Why? Because there is no dependable body that can look at these and say that, hey, this model is good for what you are looking for. And so we are trying to work upon, maybe we are not going to go there front, maybe someday or hopefully sooner than later we'll address that problem. But there are several other cases where we are presented with some models and we want to understand to see if they are ready to deploy on the ground for what they are made for. So we have evolved this solution or a framework, as we call it, after the efforts are done, because we may not be integrated through the whole life cycle. After the efforts are done, as a structured workshop, we want to conduct some sessions, identify and discover, hey, how have they handled, what is the problem definition, how have they gone about handled, what have they considered, what is the background work that they have taken into account. From that, hey, how did they handle the data? Have they taken care of the data distribution shifts? Have they handled that out of distribution data? How are they dealing with that? All of these are various considerations that we have identified as a part of this, including on how do we review the model, how do we review the results, the overall system, how is it fitting in, and also when you want to take it to deploy it on a real site, what are the different considerations, including the training, for example, have they been onboarded, is usability given due consideration. All of these considerations we have laid out, learning from all the frameworks that I've listed before, and we hope to use it for some real practical use cases that are thrown our way and make a meaningful impact. So that's what we have done. Hopefully this was useful, and thank you all for your patience.